My pleasure is to invite our president, Klaus Mainzer, to give a brief introduction to both lectures, and as usually, it will be a very interesting point of our colloquia.
Yeah, thank you, Dušan, and the new team for the new semester of Arts Meet Science. And this evening, with this opening event, is amazing because there is a remarkable coincidence between both talks. And the first talk is about the thinking universe. And, you know, in the European tradition, and we discussed about that for several times, that goes back to old ideas of Pythagoras and Euclid in antiquity, namely that music is a part of the so-called exact sciences. That means the mathematical sciences, namely taught in the so-called quadrivium with arithmetics, geometry, and astronomy, and music. And behind that was these old ideas that in the universe there is an ordering of proportions that can be expressed in different ways. For example, in arithmetics by the proportion of numbers, and in geometry by the proportion of straight lines and planes, and in astronomy, in the antique belief in the proportions of celestial spheres, and in music by the proportion of tones. And behind that, there is a belief in a universal theory of proportions. By the way, you can find that in the fifth book of Euclid's Elements by Eudoxos of Knidos, the Einstein of antiquity. It's amazing that this idea of a common harmony and proportion and balance in the universe was continued even in modern times by Kepler, and we talked about that in the last session, for example, even in quantum mechanics and relation to music. Now, this evening, the point is not only this interdisciplinary aspect, but also an intercultural aspect, because that was not reserved to European ideas, but you can find it also in Asia, especially in China, in medicine, in the theory of proportions and balance in the ancient Chinese medicine. And that is exactly the profile of our academy, you know, namely interdisciplinarity, and on the other side, the interculturality. And the second talk is very familiar. It is about the singing birds. And of course, birds have not the possibility of mathematical theory with proportions and harmony. But if you consider their songs, then you find codes of proportion and melodies and rhythms of communication. And that was a topic in a research project of the University of Oldenburg in the context of musical theory. And I'm very eager to learn more about that. So again, as I said in the beginning, a remarkable coincidence of both talks, and I wish us all exciting talks and discussions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Klaus, very much for introductions. And now I'd like to call Professor Tsalka after my short introduction of his CV. Currently, he's a professor and doctoral supervisor at CUHK-Shenzhen, I hope I pronounced correctly, and also a recipient of very important award. It was done in 2025, and it's about ethics award. And I think that's important because our academy is and should be based on ethical principles. He is also a member of the European Academy of Sciences and Arts and the chairman of the board of European Fortepiano Museum and Academy in Germany. He is internationally acclaimed pianist and early keyboard specialist, and he has presented more than 165 master classes at all continents, and he performed about 90 concerts worldwide each year. His performances have taken place at leading cultural institutions, including Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, and Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, Alvin Philharmonie in Hamburg, and the Forbidden City in Beijing. Professor Tsalka holds a Doctor of Musical Arts degree from Temple University, and he recorded over 40 critically acclaimed CDs. Alongside his performing career, he's an active scholar and editor, and he's contributing significantly to both research and performance practice. So please, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. Good evening, dear colleagues and friends from the European Academy of Arts and Sciences. I'm thankful for this opportunity. It is my pleasure to share with you details on a marvelous and original chamber music project in which I had the fortune of participating as a collaborative harpsichordist alongside German recorder player Luisa Klaus. The project, titled Vögel in Music, or Birds in Music, came to fruition during the summer of 2023 in Oldenburg, after being postponed for more than 3 years due to the pandemic. A wee bit more about that. All contemporary works in the program were composed during 2019 or 2020 by 4 European composers, but our project was put on a long hiatus due to the pandemic and the unfortunate cancellation of most of the concert life in Europe and the rest of the world. I am grateful that all musicians, composers, and musicologists involved in this endeavor waited most patiently for me to be available for this inaugural performance of these compositions. During the years of the pandemic, I was working in Shenzhen, China, at a high school for the arts, and therefore I was unable to leave the country. At some point, due to the repeated delays, I offered to bow out of the project and allow another historical keyboard performer to take my place at the harpsichord. Luckily, in the summer of 2023, I was finally free to return to Europe. The inaugural performances entailed 3 concerts in which Baroque compositions by French master Jean-Baptiste Drouat de Pousset and François Couperin, combined with 4 new compositions by Christoph Keller, Roberto Reale, Paul Mertensky-Pawlowski, and Violeta Dinescu. The project was the latest in chamber music initiative launched in 2015 by Dr. Kadia Grönke, a professor for historical musicology at the University of Oldenburg in northwest Germany. In 2015, she commenced a series of concerts titled Dialogue Concerts, which aimed to wed musicological insight with original programming in an attractive balance for the general public. I have asked her to describe the concert series and this project in particular in her own words. Beginning of quote. The aim of the dialogue concert is to bring musicology as a scientific subject to the public at large by making its presence felt on the concert stage, but never losing in this mission the sensual joy of making music. For this purpose, each of the dialogue concerts begins with an explanatory introduction given by me. Oftentimes, Practical demonstrations or interviews with the performers or composers precede the performance of a particular piece. But for most of the concert, music performances speak for itself, and narrative is found in the sequence of musical compositions. Here you can see one of the beautiful reviews we have received for the concerts. As she continues to explain, continuation of quote, much planning has gone into each of the project initiatives since 2015. Each project has counted with the support of the University of Oldenburg, as well as local governmental funds. The programs develop a fixed subject matter and adhere to musicologically informed parameters to develop and to enrich their content. These parameters are initially sketched out by me in my role as musicologist, and then enriched in cooperation with the marvelous composers and performers I have the honor to collaborate with. In turn, audience members appreciate the opportunity these programs offer to listen to rare, fascinating repertoire on stage within a contained theme or narrative. Here you can see 2 pages from two of our programs in Oldenburg that summer. Continuation of the quote. As I select the topic and define the initial boundaries for each dialogue concert, I always find myself adhering to 2 guiding principles. First is to perform these concerts as often as possible on historical keyboards and other rarely heard historical instruments. The unfamiliar sonorities immediately connect members of the audience at a visceral level with the soundscape and musical style of composers such as Johann Sebastian Bach, Franz Schubert, and Rachmaninoff. Audience members exposed to these instruments often reevaluate their prejudice against classical music and value, perhaps for the first time, the richness of our shared musical tradition. The second principle is to try to present contemporary music in such a way that audience members are not intimidated or alienated. This is often achieved by integrating newly commissioned pieces to the concert's guiding topic or narrative. End of quote. For the dialogue concerts of July 2023, the guiding topic centered on birds, their songs and their enriching presence in our musical tradition. 4 contemporary composers found inspiration on a short piece for recorder and harpsichord, published in 1697 by the French Baroque composer Jean-Baptiste Drouot de Bousset, titled Pourquoi du Rossignol, or Why Sweet Nightingale. This beautiful song with basso continuo, marked tendrement or tenderly by the composer, is in G major. Concerning the key of G major, as most of you are well aware, before equal temperament became standard during the early Romantic era, each key had its own characteristics and emotional associations. In Christian Schubert's Ideen zu einer Ästhetik der Tonkunst from 1806, G major is described as, beginning of quote, everything rustic, idyllic and lyrical, every calm and satisfied passion, every tender gratitude for true friendship and faithful love. In a word, every gentle and peaceful emotion of the heart is correctly expressed by this key. End of quote. Pourquoi du Rossignol has mere 45 measures, following a chordal semi-improvisatorial introduction of 4 measures by the basso continuo player. The singer, in the case of our concerts, Luisa Klaus playing the traverso flute, enters with a dolce, tender, and expressive melodic line meant to evoke the awakening feelings of love of the poet as he listens to the song of the nightingale at dawn. This is quintessential French poetry that could trace its roots all the way to the troubadour tradition of Provence of the High Middle Ages. And in many ways, the compositional response of Drouat de Bousset is also profoundly French. Let me play for you. No, just a second. 2:50. Since this theme is a representative of all the pieces and is sort of the leitmotif, the inspiration, let me play a bit for you. 2:59. In the interest of time, I will stop. It is my experience that when one performs French Baroque music, there is an opportunity for more freedom and abandonment in one's interpretation, especially when one compares it to the more structured forms and contrapuntal clarity of German Baroque music. As I prepared the 4 contemporary pieces by the composers of this project, I was curious to see their response and reimagining of the expressive universe of Drouat de Bousset. I was surprised to see how each of them had a completely different aesthetic response to both music and poetry. German composer Christoph Keller wrote a duet for harpsichord and 4 different registers of Baroque recorders: the soprano, treble, tenor, and bass. Luisa provided the audience with a marvelous interpretation of this highly complex piece, which actualized the Baroque art of ornamentation over a repeating ground bass. I find that this work, as is often the case with Dr. Keller's work, offers rich harmonic sensibility, complex yet transparent writing, with meticulous details and a fine understanding of various musical structures. Possibly it was the most Germanic work in our program, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. Let me play for you an extract of Wie die Vögel des Himmels, or like the bird of heaven. have to confess that the bells, not this bell, but the clocks you may have heard are actually a myriad of clocks in my current residency in Mexico City, so they're not part of the composition, even though they did fit in rather beautifully. Italian-German composer Roberto Reale, on the other hand, composed the work for harpsichord solo, using fragments and snatches from the historic original and creating a response of light and fine allusions to the original song within the musical texture. The work is titled Flugblätter, or Flying Leaves. The initial tempo is libero, or free. There are a myriad of indications, which sometimes seem contradictory by the composers throughout this score. For example, only in the first two lines, the composer requests for a poco accelerando, a bit accelerated, then a ritardando, slowing down, followed by a tempo, in tempo, lontano, far away, più mosso, with more movement, and più lontano, even more further away. Perhaps one should remember that Western musical notation becomes more precise as the centuries pass, with the highest levels of precision in the 20th and the 21st century. On the other hand, if we look at the compositions of the great German master Johann Sebastian Bach, arguably the greatest composer we have in Western culture, and certainly the one who was the most influential to subsequent musical eras, in his compositions there are very few indications to mark changes in dynamics, dynamic levels, articulation, phrasing, and or tempo. Therefore, when first approaching this beautiful work by Professor Reale, one has the impression that he has a very modern understanding of notation. Upon further reading, however, there is a sense of freedom in the phrasing. At times, it almost feels as an unmeasured prelude by one of the great French composers, such as Louis or François Couperin, due to the many arpeggiations written on the score. An arpeggio was a way of illuminating, dramatizing, and beautifying one's playing on the harpsichord or on the lute. There are also signs for breathing or pausing for the score, and word descriptions become more and more poetic as the piece advances. For example, deciso, pesante, decisive and heavy, luminoso e deciso, luminous and decisive, con anima poco rubato, with life not much rubato. There is also a strong sense that this work has many inner motives, that its soul is improvisatorial and through composed. It is a beautiful, challenging work which I was thankful to premiere and to bring to life. I would like to play a short fragment of this piece for you. German composer Paul Mertens Pawlowski composed a cycle of 4 short solo pieces for different recorders, using not only the music of Bussert, but also the Song of the Lark by Peter Tchaikovsky, as well as imitations of real birds' voices titled Vogelfrei, or Bird Free. I find his work to portray strong emotions and to present many colors with a fine sense of a musical narrative, beautifully composed. I much hope to hear and to perform more works by him in the future. As was the case for all other works in our duo program, this was brilliantly interpreted by Luisa. Due to time constrictions, I will not play an excerpt of this cycle. Finally, Romanian-German composer Professor Violeta Dinescu wrote an intriguing triptych titled To Match a Bird's Way of Life. The first movement is for a recorder solo, the second one for harpsichord solo, and the third one is a duet. Professor Dinescu, who does not need an introduction in this forum, is a multi-talented artist. Her beautifully crafted music scores quickly made this clear for both Luisa and I. She allows the interpreter much freedom, not only concerning the order of the three movements, but also large segments of the triptych included guided improvisation. As you can imagine, it is rather challenging to perform a duo work which includes the possibility of numerous improvisations and embellishments. I believe, however, that both Luisa and I rose to the challenge. The program and slight variation of it were heard in various locations in Oldenburg during the first days of July 2023 by three very different audiences. I particularly enjoyed performing for the children of Oldenburg and hope that initiatives of this nature will take root on other parts of Europe to bring musicology, historical keyboards, chamber music, and contemporary compositions to audiences avid to reconnect with the past, present, and future of our musical tradition. I am thankful for the energy, enthusiasm, and logistical coordination of Professor Kadia Grünke and Professor Violeta Dinescu to achieve this type of highly original and brilliant music programming in Europe. I encourage you all to visit the Dialogue Concerten webpage to learn more about past and future projects and to possibly offer your support. I am content to report that we are in discussions to record a CD with this repertoire. In June 2026, I shall travel to Oldenburg for several concerts, with Luisa offering a different trio program with a viola da gamba player, as well as to rehearse with Luisa intensively for our Birds CD. Hopefully by 2027, a CD documenting these beautiful works will be released. Lastly, I wish to thank all of you wholeheartedly for joining this journey with me. I much look forward to any comments, queries, suggestions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for excellent lecture. And now I'd like to ask Barry to introduce the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Dušan. So yeah, this is really my great pleasure and to introduce Dr. Bei Peng. So she's really a distinguished scholar from the musicology and intercultural philosophy at Beijing Normal University, Zhuhai. So Dr. Peng, so she's educated in both China and Germany. So Dr. Peng received her doctor in the musicology from Heidelberg University in 2019, and she's also a student, right, from Violeta. So yeah, this is really nice of you to come here. And she's actually the first scholar from the mainland of China to earn a PhD in musicology from this very historic institution. So her academic journey brings really to reach the intellectual traditions and reflect a lifelong engagement with cross-cultural dialogue. Her research explores musical cultural exchange between the East and Western world, also the music aesthetics. So she has published more than 20 scholar articles and also contributed to national funded researchers project in China. So beyond her academic research, Dr. Peng plays a vital role in introducing major German philosophical and musicological work to the Chinese readers, and her work stands at the forefront of the intercultural scholarships and global humanities dialogues. So yeah, so Dr. Peng, we are really looking forward to your lecture today.
Thank you, Barry. Wait a moment. So I'm very happy to join this. It's okay, no?
Can you see it?
Yeah, okay.
We can see it very well.
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy to join this colloquium for the second time. Today I will present my new research on music theory, traditional Chinese medicine, and cosmology. And today I will talk about two things. First, I will talk about how music and the human body are connected. Then I will explore the concept of the human body, not just as a biological entity, but as a resonating structure, a singing universe. In traditional Chinese medicine, the idea of life energy is very important. We think of the human bodies as a small universe. This is the idea of the unity of heavens and men. It implied that human life and the universe share a common origin. Okay, they behave in the same way because they follow the same nature laws and have the same internal processes. Taoist philosophy says that the human body is like a small heavens and earth. This is because it extends together with the great heaven and earth of the universe. So what is it that connects the human body to the universe? The answer in TCM is qi. Qi is a vital energy. It moves through the body in a very organic way, following biological pathways. We call this meridians. So what exactly are meridians? In TCM, there are a network of channels that allow yin and yang qi to flow. They connect our internal organs to the surface of our skin. They integrate every part of the body, allowing it to function as a unified whole. They are not just blood vessels and nerves. Modern research shows that their pathways often follow connective tissue and neurovascular bundles. Along these meridians, we have acupoints. In TCM, there are specific spots where energy rises to the surface. These points are very active biologically. You usually find them near nerve endings and small blood vessels. Stimulating these points can help the body return to balance. So today I'm not going to explain how acupoints and meridian work, but to help everyone understand the rest of the content, I will first briefly explain how meridians and acupoints are arranged. So the distribution of these meridians follows a straight symmetrical pattern. There are three principles. The first principle is that the meridians are divided based on the body parts they go through. There are 6 meridians on the upper limbs, which we call the hand meridians, and 6 meridians on the lower limbs, which we call the foot meridians. So the second principle is that we have yin and yang meridians. The inside from the limbs chest are yin, while the outside of the limbs back and waist are young. The second principle, there are 12 meridians, which are like the body's own energy pathways. Those energy pathways can be found on both of the left and right sides of the body. Two special meridians run down the center of the body, dividing it into two equal parts. So this human system with acupoints as its nodes and meridians as its pathways comes from the 1,000 years of Chinese medical praxis. But one issue has always been missed. This is also my question. Are the points in this images random, or is there a ratio reason for this placement? As a musicologist, I want to understand the words through music, so I have a new idea. The way the acupoints are arranged is based on more than just biology. It is also about harmony. First, let me explain the core idea of my theory. So in TCM, we often liken qi to water flowing in a river. In this context, meridians are like riverbeds. Water flows along the riverbed and qi moves along the meridians. So, but I suggest that we change how we think about it. Replace the image of the river with the image of the string, like a violin string. We can think of the meridians as vibrating strings, and qi is the energy that makes these strings vibrate. In physics, when a string vibrates, it creates a standing wave. These waves have stable points where there is no movement. We call this nodes. The distance between these points is not random. It follows exact mathematical proportions, what we in music theory calls harmonic intervals. This table shows the most common mathematical ratios of music intervals. My point is that if we think of the qi as a kind of vibration moving through the meridian strings, then the acupoints can be seen as nodes of the standing waves. To prove this theory, we need to show that the spacing between acupoints following the mathematical rules of music harmony. But to show that meridians and acupoints works based on music harmony, we need to fix a problem. How can we find harmony that works for everyone, not matter what high they are? So TCM offers possible answers to this problem. They developed a special way to measure people's bodies called 同身寸. 同身寸 means own body measurements. It used our own body as a ruler within its the width of the thumb or the distance between the middle finger joints. For example, the width of your thumb is the same as the width of the second joint of your middle finger, and both are 1 cun wide. The width of your index and middle fingers when placed inside by side is 1.5 cun, and the width of all 4 fingers together is 3 cun. So in a TCM, finding acupoint measuring with your with your hand. So this means that the unit of measurement is based on the injury zone. It is a proportional unit that individual differences. So it makes sure to make sure my research is accurate. I use the national standard for finding these points. It helps me. It helps me find acupoints on people of different kinds. So there are there are two. Okay. So then I did this. Shows I'm meridian. Work out each acupoint is on that meridian using our body measurements. Then work out of the ratio of the distances between acupoints that are next to each other, and finally compare whether these ratios match up with musical intervals. What happened is fascinating. The body follow music intervals. Here I present 4 sets of data. For example, you can see the proportional distance of certain acupoints along the 3 meridians on the arm. First, we see the 3 meridians of the arm selected and the acupoints above them. For example, the alarm meridian is RU, the number 3. Following it means this is the 3rd acupoint on the lower meridian. The length from RU3 to RU5 is 6 cun, while the length from RU4 to RU5 is 5 cun. Therefore, the ratio between them is 6 to 5. If a string is stretched between RU3 and RU5 and the finger is pressed at the RU4 position, when it vibrates, it will produce a note 3 minor third higher than the entire string. Then you see the proportions here between the acupoints along a meridian on the leg and there's a ratio between the acupoints on the chest and abdomen, and finally the proportions of the head. So there are 2 to note. The information shown here is just a small example of acupoints on different parts of the body. The proportional relationships go way beyond this, but the data show some interesting things. And please note that this study does not include points on the joints and spine. These areas need a special way to measure the bones, which is different from the method we need here. So these 4 tables show interesting connection between the human body and the music harmonics. We can several important things. First, we found the distance between the acupoints follow mathematical proportions that match the numerical ratios found in music acoustics. Proportion like 1 to 2 to 1, 3 to 2, and 4 to 3 often appear in data. There are the perfectly consonant intervals. We found no dissonant intervals here, and not a single acupoint is placed at random. Every one of them strictly follows the harmonic system. So what does this mean? In physics, consonant intervals represent the most stable vibrations. They tell us that the human body is not random, and our body is like a perfectly turned string. The acupoints sit on the most stable notes. In essence, the human body is built like a space of music, a piece of music. It is strict and harmonious. So second, the music connection is universal. Most points from harmonious relationships, there's a general rule here. The closer the points are to each other, the most consonant or simple, the ratio is like perfect fives or octaves. As points get farther apart, the intervals tend to become more dissonant or complex. The second part is very interesting. It suggests a connection between form and function. When we compare the legs and the arms, we see very different mathematical patterns. Leg acupoints show a high ratio of 2 to 1. And arm acupoints show a different with ratios like 3rd and 6 being present. So a third is not just about points on the same meridian. So here I also found ratios between different meridians. You can see this clearly with the lines on the tummy. This suggests that the whole system is connected by a complicated shape. Of course, this data represent only the start. I'm still working on the calculations. I'm already see the Fibonacci numbers and fractal patterns in the data. To really understand this, we need to look at it in more detail using different subjects like traditional Chinese music, Chinese medicine, mathematics, and music theory. So based on that, we know right now we can suggest an early idea about that might be going on. The meridians are like vibrating energy strings as bioenergy flows along this path. It creates standing waves at the specific locations of the acupoints. Everyone's body shape is different, so everyone had their own standard pitch. We are all playing our own unique somatic music. So now I'd like to invite you to think about the solar system. This is the second part of my report. The idea that planets make a kind of music isn't new. In fact, Johannes Kepler talks about this 400 years ago. Kepler thought that the movement of the planets was similar to the way music is made. Kepler thought that the solar system is playing a grand polyphony that humans cannot hear. Modern researchers like Hartmut Warm use a computer to show that the orbits of planets form exact geometric patterns that match perfectly with musical harmony. Kepler's and Worm's theory have given me a lot of ideas. Kepler's philosophy teaches that geometry is an archetype of the order and life of the world. The universe is bound together by harmonic proportions. If humans are beings, then they must also follow the same harmonical proportions to some extent. So on this base, I have applied Worm's data by thinking about the mass behind it to say if there are any ways the planets move in the solar system and the acupoint on the human body are the same. So first, I use Worm's calculated ratio of the two planets' semi-minor axis. The minor axis is the shortest radius of the planet's orbit. It is the distance from the center of the orbit to its nearest edge. So when we calculate the ratio of the semi-minor axis of two planets, we are comparing the geometric dimensions of their orbits. This ratio shows the way the two celestial bodies are lined up with each other, just as music intervals are ratios in time. These planetary ratios can be seen as music intervals in space. So I translated exact data from Hamilton-Worm into music interval. First, we see that the distance between the planets are not random. They follow the mathematical ratios that create harmony in music. Then we will see something really interesting when we compare the planets' semi-minor axis to the human body. First, look at the right line that runs down the middle of the body. In TCM, it is known as the Ren meridian. It is one of the most important energy channels in the body. These circles illustrate the geometric representation of the semi-minor axis ratio shown in the table on the left. The circles here show abstract proportions of how planets move, but not the actual pathways of their movement. I have aligned the diameters of these circles along the single line, namely the Ren meridian. So the interselected points of these planetary circles almost perfectly align with a certain acupoints. So moreover, these acupoints are the key vital energy centers of the human body. Of course, I cannot yet explain why these two phenomena correspond to each other, but for now we can understand them as an analogy. And yeah, we can see this as a new way to thinking. This research makes our think again about what it means to be a human. If our bodies are instruments that is tuned to the same frequencies as the planets, then the Taoist idea of the unity of heaven and man is not just philosophy, it's all about physics. We are not just watching the universe, we are part of it, creating our own little symphony. So I have published my research in this book, which I co-edited with David Bartosz and Attila Gompier. There is now a German translate of the book. So this, or I have to say, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peng. This is really fantastic talk. Yeah, so now I think we already have audience want to ask questions, right? So please go ahead.
Prof, sind the face. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting for me as a musician. And my question is it a question of quality and worth to use a tuning system or structures according to overtone proportions?
This is the question for me? Or for,
Only,
for
no, to Bei Peng.
Very good.
Ja, kann ich das auf Deutsch antworten?
Ja, gerne.
Leichter für mich. Okay, fragen Sie doch mal, weil ich dachte auch, das war eine Frage an den anderen Herrn.
Ja, ist es eine Frage von Qualität, Tonsysteme und Strukturen zu benutzen, die dem Obertonspektrum entsprechen?
Ja, würde ich sagen.
Okay.
Ja, ich weiß noch viel zu wenig über die Sache.
It's a discussion in music aesthetics. Is tonality connected with nature? Or is atonality and 12-tone music? What is your opinion in this question?
Oh, also für Kepler ist auf jeden Fall Dur und Moll natürlich. Das hatte er geschrieben. In der Natur befinden sich Dur und Moll Skala. Und auf meiner Forschung, ich finde, man kann auf jeden Fall auf jeder Meridian einen Tonleiter bauen. Das habe ich auch versucht, das geht auf jeden Fall. Und auf diese mittlere Meridian, was ich gezeigt habe, gibt es eine Obertonreihe.
Ja.
Ja, das habe ich heute nicht so viel Zeit, aber es ist sehr kompliziert, um das zu übersetzen. Das gibt es aber es ist auch interessant zu überlegen, warum. Warum ist das so? Und was gibt es noch mehr? Ich glaube, es gibt noch viel mehr zu entdecken in diese Richtung und auch vielleicht nicht nur auf Menschenkörper, was die anderen Wissenschaftler auch schon sowieso tun. Ja, die suchen diese Obertonreihe und auch andere geometrische Formen in der Natur, auf andere Lebewesen. Ich will nur, in meiner Forschung geht es nur darum, weil vorher die chinesische Medizin ist immer sehr praktisch. Also die Leute konzentrieren sich wirklich nur auf die Praxis und die fragen sich nie, warum. Warum sind die Punkte so? Deswegen ist mein Versuch, um auf diese Art und Weise, um diese Frage zu beantworten, um zu sagen, die menschliche Energiebahn ist auch harmonisch zu strukturieren. Aber es gibt es wahrscheinlich.
Thank you. It's interesting for the contemporary music because tonality seems to be conservative. Perhaps it's not right.
Naja, ja, wenn man Adorno studiert, was würde man da sagen? Natürlich ist unsere Interpretation was Schönes. Ja, aber es gibt auf jeden Fall eine natürliche Ordnung, das muss man sagen. Ob wir eine Qualität drin finden können oder ob das wirklich schön klingt für uns oder für die Leute in der Zukunft oder wie, das kann man noch darüber reden, finde ich.
Okay.
Aber wir wollen nur mal wissen, dass es eine natürliche Ordnung, die musikalische Ordnung auch in der Natur, in dem Menschenkörper überhaupt gibt. Ja.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know very much about music, but I was very interested in looking at Chinese
medicine with meridians and so on, then combination with celestial arrangements and music. And you said that we are kind of ourselves and music and planets are all in a kind of harmony. And I'd like to hear, did you produce any so-called celestial or space music, or is there anything that we could hear?
No,
Not yet.
not yet, but in the future, perhaps.
Okay,
yeah.
wonderful, wonderful. That's just a short question and comment.
No.
But really, it's, the presentation that's related to medicine just shows how little we know. Western medicine is one part based on some, let's say, physical properties, also science. And just to look at acupuncture that came to Western medicine, I think in China, you said they are practical, which is good. But it's also good to understand everything. Do you think that we can come to the bottom of understanding of these relations in the body, in the universe, and so on? Is it too far?
Schon von du die Grundlage gefunden hast. Oder ob das
No. Ich probiere das halt nur rum.
She says it's just in an early stage.
Versuch.
So it's a very basic idea and yeah.
Ich würde auch mal hören, was die Leute dazu finden, ja? Das ist ja
She's
für mich sehr
very
interessant.
curious what you think about this idea and about this little seed, so to speak, right? It's like a seed that's not very much grown yet.
Okay.
So
anyway, it was interesting to listen to, and I think that Barry can carry on with discussion very well.
Thank you. Because I think I forgot the tradition from Violeta. So usually I think we invite the president, Professor Mainzer, right, to give a summary and also comments for sure. So sorry, I forgot that. So please, Professor Mainzer. So.
Thank you. Bei Peng, your talk was absolutely fascinating for me because it exactly reconstructs what I said in the beginning with this general theory of proportions in medicine and in astronomy and in music. And in the context of Kepler, you very accurate reconstructed these different proportions. By the way, that is not only an old speculation of the past. In the 20th century, the great astronomer Eddington, the British astronomer who confirmed general relativity, he also wrote a booklet about the proportions of natural constants in modern physics. And that can also be interpreted in your sense. So I think that is absolute also modern approach. But what I'm interested in, and that is also going in medicine, are there concrete applications in the ancient medical Chinese medicine? I know in China, traditional medicine is embedded in modern medical applications. So my question is, are these series of proportions also applied in modern Chinese medicine in any way?
Nein, überhaupt nicht. Da habe ich noch mit einem Professor aus Peking gesprochen, der chinesische Medizin und westliche Medizin beide beherrscht. Es ist noch nicht klar. Also die chinesische Medizin ist, wie gesagt, sehr, sehr praktisch. Es gibt zwar auch chinesische Medizin-Universität, aber die forschen auch eher so mit konkreter Behandlungsmethode oder und so weiter. Aber diese Perspektive, also von mir selber, habe ich noch nie gehört. Das muss ich sagen, ist es noch Anfang.
May I also ask a question to the first speaker concerning the bird project in Oldenburg? I only want to ask you about the interdisciplinary aspect. Did you or do you also consider the birds or the brain of the birds from a point of view of natural sciences? That means in your project, that would be a nice interdisciplinary aspect, how birds express these, by the way, also proportions, musical proportions in the codes of their communication, and how is that reflected in music theory?
That is, yes, has not been considered yet, but this is an absolutely wonderful idea, and most probably one can add say some fascinating things about birds, or read some poetry, or even show some glorious paintings, and then add the music to that, and create a great panorama of knowledge and beauty concerning those glorious animals. So thank you for that. That's a wonderful idea.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, now then we go to Andrew. So Andrew, you also have the question.
Sure. Just like Dušan, I would like to start with a disclaimer that I'm not an expert in music. I love to listen to music. I love music, but not an expert in any sense. So I have a question that as you develop these wonderful new concepts, and of course we are all fascinated by this, and Michael Tsalka, this question is to you. Then how are you influenced by audience reaction? And does it change something, or you are guessing the direction? So how do you get this the resonance for your music?
Thank you. This is a wonderful question. I find that contemporary music for me is very similar to early music, in the sense that we have to present those great heroes and heroines. Otherwise, they're not presented. So I have worked very intensively for the last 20 years, probably, with contemporary composers, and I believe around 90 compositions from composers of all over the world were written for me. And I very often combine these with early music. So one work from the Baroque or the classical era, often by lesser-known composers, and then a work that was commissioned for me. And I absolutely love to, and actually combining that, playing those on an organ or clavichord or fortepian or harpsichord, adds another layer of interest, because you are playing on all the instruments and you're asking a living composer to write for those instruments, and also to relate to our tradition, to our past. So I always find this a great gift, and working with rare human beings and musicians, such as Violeta, who is a very, very dear friend, and I am very privileged to know her. That has been a great, great gift, and I think that the reaction of the audience has most of the time been very, very positive, and I have so far performed in about 60 countries, and I actually believe that if one presents something of quality, and I would not otherwise perform that, and you play that with your heart, and you work seriously on that, and the audience feels that sincerity, and they feel the sincerity and beauty of the contemporary composers, and everything works very beautifully. I mean, I was just judging a competition in Macau for judging 700 pianists, and among them my students, and I kept telling the pianist, play with your heart, because the way we judge is really, we either like a performer or we dislike them. We do not really sit there and count the number of wrong notes. And I believe that audiences all over the world listen in that fashion. Exactly, they want to see if receive something for their soul, they want to see if they receive something for their intellect, and they want to see the sincerity of the composer and the performer. So I so far, I have been very, very privileged to know all these great, great composers, and the response was almost always positive.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And now we have Peter. Peter also have questions.
Yeah, to both presenters. The first is coming to birds and the singing of birds. Is there any consideration to look at the choirs of birds? The background of it is I'm living in an area where actually migratory birds are convening, if you want. So what is the communication amongst birds? Individually on the one hand, or communicating one to the other, but as well, is there something like a choir or something? I don't know. The other question, the presentation, the harmony in the Chinese understanding is as far as I understood, not a pre-stabilized harmony, but it is a permanent, well, not conflict, but a permanent movement. Can you extend this a little bit? How to reach harmony, if you want, and how to maintain it, if it's not given as such, but has to be elaborated or has to be reached.
Should I reply first, Professor Peng, or would you like to reply first? Or I will reply first. Could I ask where you are residing? I'm interested.
It's the south of Denmark.
Ah, beautiful. Yes, I think that's a wonderful question, and I've, for example, been traveling a lot the last few years to Australia and New Zealand, which I love very dearly, and I'm always fascinated by the sounds of the kookaburra in the morning in Sydney, and there is great beauty in kind of choir of birds, and I absolutely think that this should be developed. And actually, thank you for that idea. I will write to some of my dear friends and ask if they could. I'm thinking perhaps a work for organ would be great, because one can use many registers and then portray many choir of birds, or a great number of birds. But that is a wonderful question. Thank you. A wonderful idea.
So sorry, can you repeat your question again?
Yeah, the question of there are different understandings, I think, of harmony. The one is the pre-stabilized harmony that is given as such and is not questioned, basically. In Deutsch eine prästabile gegebene Harmonie. The other understanding is more the dialectical, if you want to use this term, dialectical understanding. It has to be reached. It's not given as such, but it has to. There's the permanent tension between the two poles, yin yang. This is one, and how is this balanced? How do you reach actually the philosophical dimension? Right? How is it possible to reach actually this balance, that on the one hand, or that not one side is dominating and the other is suppressed?
Ja, wie kann ich sagen? Also es gibt schon philosophische Perspektive im chinesischen Medizin, was die dann genauer sprechen über Yin und Yang, wie das sich zusammen wirken und auch die 5 Elementen und so weiter und so fort. Das habe ich noch nicht jetzt in meiner Forschung eingebracht, weil das zu kompliziert war. Aber auf jeden Fall, ich finde, man sollte weiterdenken, auch, wie gesagt, die verschiedenen Meridians und die verschiedenen Punkte, die sind alle mit Yin und Yang auf eine dialektische Weise miteinander bezogen. Das kann man auch da mit den mathematischen Proportionen zusammenbringen und diskutieren, warum steht eben dieser Körperteil genau diese Proportion oder ob das bei ähnlicher Seite auf dem Körper, wenn das eine Seite Yin ist und andere Seite Yang, ob das ob der Unterschied oder eine Ähnlichkeit spielt bei den mathematischen Proportionen. Und es ist ein toller Hinweis von Ihnen. Und ich würde das dann einfach auf diese Richtung weiterdenken. Ja.
Should I paraphrase that in English or is it okay in German?
No, it's fine. I'll get this.
Thank you. Then we still have the question from Ernst. Yeah. Then Maria. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for the two very interesting presentations. I have a question or remark to both of the talks. At first, on birdsong. We have done some studies at Peking University, not at Beijing normal, by the way, together with Professor Bao, who happens to be also a member of the European Academy. And for instance, the question is the appreciation of beauty, of aesthetics, of birdsong. And you can take, for instance, the song of the Amsel, Turdus merula. And when you measure that, it somehow matches approximately a time window of 3 seconds or so. And other birds as well. So there is some kind of temporal constancy. And this actually is some kind of fundamental principle of human brains, a time window of around some 3 seconds, in which we appreciate beauty in a particular way. So when you change technically, the duration of this song of Turdus merula, the Amsel, a blackbird in English actually, then you change the aesthetic appreciation. So I think it would probably be useful to link this to music, because it just so happens that the duration of musical motifs in the Viennese tradition from Mahler, from Haydn to Mahler, quite often the musical motifs are around 3 seconds as well. So there's another way maybe to link bird songs and musical motifs and look at phase relationships, something like that.
I would absolutely love to, if I could ask that you send me some of these researches, and I would love to read them and consider them. And there is so much mystery in music and so many questions of, for example, how and why are we very touched by certain repeat of certain elements, or what constitutes of magic in a performance. And I think that something like that could be very, very helpful. And I would love to perhaps commission a piece where, for example, several composers relate to the amount of seconds for each bird, and then we see how that works. That would be absolutely wonderful. So if I could ask you to kindly send me one of these researches, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, let me add perhaps something. I grew up scientifically in the environment of ethology. Konrad Lorenz, for instance, indicated to one of the founders of ethology, having a Nobel Prize in 1971, I think. Of course, the bird song first defines your territory. But he indicated also that you can observe that birds just have fun to sing. So you actually can feel this difference. Another point, perhaps, with respect to communication between birds. It is quite obvious if you watch crows, Krähen, that they actually communicate quite nicely, even with humans. That is sort of my observation. So that's one question. And I have another point with respect to Chinese medicine. When I took foot massage several times actually in Beijing, they tell you that certain areas, you were not referring actually to different areas of the foot with respect to different organs. So they tell you, okay, the special point on the foot corresponds to the kidney, to the heart, or whatever. And it's quite interesting. And everybody says, of course, okay, this is parapsychology or something nonsense, because it somehow doesn't relate to physiology. There is a point, as you said, the link between sort of Western medicine and sort of analytical analyses and Chinese medicine. This is an open question. It is indeed an open question. And there is one important point, and now we have to go a little bit into medicine and physiology. We usually imply that the body surface has a very clear somatic representation in the visual cortex, and there are certain organs related to that. So the touch receptors, so this is already nicely described. It is implicitly implied that the perioste, the skin of the bone, where you feel the pain, has the same bodily representation in the visual cortex. And this is actually not known, and it's probably not true. But because embryologically speaking, they are completely different domains, the bones and the skin. So here's an open question, and I have asked several times colleagues, also in Germany, who work on pain reception, well, you should follow that, you could study this. This is actually an open question and a very nice territory of more research. Thank you for your attention.
Ist das eine Frage dabei?
No, it's just a comment. I think discussions maybe, but you were implied there is no cooperation between this. Actually, there is, and indeed, I think there's a link. A lot of discussions between maybe not between Beijing Normal University and Peking University, but that's another matter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I can say something, because I know her work, I think it's somehow also related to the idea of holography, like that mathematical principles are expressed in different ways, in different forms, but still there is some kind of, so to speak, holographic information underneath or partial expression of this mathematical proportional living reality that connects seemingly different elements in the world of our experience and in nature and the biosphere and also the wider element, the wider context of also even the solar system, which is related by means of gravity, electromagnetism, magnetic fields to our living bodies, right? So also on this on this plane. So, and I think this is what Dr. Peng is up to. This is the direction she's approaching. So there's this kind of mathematical holographic information foundation that's kind of underneath, and she has a great intuition and found this connection, right, between Kepler, between his data, the modern data of Hartmut Worm, and this Chinese tradition or the expression of it, standardized expression of it.
No question, that's very challenging, very nice. But holography, I think in this case, in the biology, I think it was a big fashion some decades ago, but the visual perception works holographically. This has been disproven. But of course, we have to find the mathematics, and you go one way, sure. No.
I mean, holographic in the sense of a holographic philosophy of a information-based worldview, maybe.
That's another category then, yeah.
It's like a cosmological element in here that relates to biology, which is, I think, personally, I think it's quite interesting to pursue maybe a little further in the future. But as you said, it's right. It's at an early stage, and it has these philosophical, not just scientific elements, but also these philosophical questions that are attached to it, because actually you can't explain why, right? It's like it's just like a strange analogy, as she said in her presentation.
Das ist nur eine Interpretation von mir.
Yeah.
Then we have the question from Maria. Maria, go ahead. Thank you.
Both talks have been extremely interesting, and clearly there is a link between the two talks. But my question is to the first speaker. I have found extremely interesting and fascinating this project of bird music. And also we have listened this evening to very beautiful pieces of music. My question is the following. For a contemporary composer like you, is in this bird music project, to what extent is imitation of birds and transformations of these imitation still important? For instance, you didn't mention either Messiaen or Respighi, and we know very well that their work in this field has been extremely interesting. But is their work still interesting for you as contemporary composers? And another point, do you think that from a theoretic point of view, it is interesting to compare the musical structures, for instance, melodic or harmonic structures that can be recognized in bird songs, and the melodic or harmonic or other musical structures that can be recognized in human music? For instance, we know very well that we normally associate to the cuckoo's music a descending major or perhaps in some cases minor third interval. This has been done even by Beethoven in the famous second movement of the Pastorale Symphony. Do you think that it is interesting also from the philosophical point of view, trying to study the relationships that hold between human musical structures and bird musical structures? Because from the philosophical point of view, we might conclude that if these relationships are very strong between what happens for animals and for humans, after all, there are some musical structures that are strongly universal, but extremely strongly universal. What is your opinion about this question?
Well, these are all wonderful, wonderful comments and questions and observations. And we could probably spend the next 2 days speaking about them. But I hope I will have the pleasure of meeting you in person, that we can discuss some of these questions.
It would be very nice.
I think
perhaps in Salzburg for the next meeting in Salzburg. Will you be there?
Unfortunately, I cannot be there because I have concerts in Mexico City during that time. But very hopefully in 2027 I can join you. But I think that I did not, of course, mention the great Messiaen, for example, because my talk was very limited to this specific project of birds. But actually, we have already in 1677 a great work which is rarely played by Alessandro Poglietti called Rossignolo, the Nightingale, which is 70 minutes of extremely virtuosic harpsichord music, as complex or more complex than the Goldberg Variations, which was composed about 70 years later. And so there is a really fascinating repertoire going throughout probably almost 500 years of keyboard music. And personally, I refuse to take sides about the question of tonality or atonality or piano or early keyboards. I'm very content to take all the time and to explore and work with great curiosity and love and find the beauty in all of them. And I believe there is a beauty. And of course, tonality and atonality are very, very different. But I can see the beauty and the expressiveness in each of them. Of course, I have my great preferences and the great composers that are sort of godlike figures for me, and I would work more on them. I'm not saying that everything is equal, but I think to answer your question about compositions, I also think that as a performer, I am a servant of the music, and I also serve the composers. So that is one of the reasons I love to work with great contemporary composers. And naturally, I add my idea, my interpretation, and of course, I rather work with composers who are very flexible and allow me to improvise or embellish, or actually content when I find a completely different interpretation or tempi, but they are convinced by it. But in this sense, those composers were given this theme and this beautiful French song from 1670, and we wanted them to give complete rein to their imagination. And then I'm working with them, and I'm trying to understand how they envision all of that. For example, in the work of Dr. Keller, there is a lot of repetition, there is a lot of logic, there is a great sense of architecture. In the works of Violeta Dinescu, there are parts that are extremely logical and beautiful and analytical, and then there are parts that are completely anarchic, and one can do whatever one wants. And she actually asks the performer, for example, she writes, you can return this at least 3 times, which means you can also return it 30 times. Or there is sort of a cloud of unspecific notes, and you can do with them whatever you will. Or there is a fermata, and she would like you to improvise. And she truly would want the performer to become an organic part of the composition, to love the composition, to find oneself in the composition, and also at the same time try to portray her spirit and her ideas. And only when one reaches this fusion, then she is actually very, very happy and delighted. That's one of the reasons I love working with her, because it's such a fascinating maze of ideas and combinations. I hope that answers at least 1% of your fantastic question.
Yes, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you also for this in-depth exchange. So, yeah, maybe I allow to ask the question also to Dr. Peng, because I really like your lecture. I think it's very inspiration concerning about combined music and TCM. So I think after I listen your lecture, so I'm thinking maybe your philosophy or your hypothesis, maybe you can explain why this music therapy, right? It's because for some disease, for example, in China, they have different tones, right? So for some instrument, some sound, it's really, for example, beneficial for the kidney or for liver somehow. So maybe from your calculation or this mathematical combination, do you think they might be a link?
Yes, Tsalka auf Deutsch oder auf English as we do this. 我先跟你说中文吧，这样的话，对，就是这个东西在音乐治疗上会有一个非常大的前景，因为我们音乐治疗之前只是 只是怎么说，就是没有特别的去强调这种人体本身的这个和谐。然后我觉得我这个理论呢，就是我们可以有研制一些新的一些机器，就是我知道有人在读我的这个文章，他也是做这种就是疗法的，他在就是发明一些就是相关的一些机器，就是我们可以通过针灸的疗法，比方说如果我们针灸那个针连上机器之后，如果我们给它一个特别的一个频率的震动的话，然后插在某一个穴位上，其实就可以通过，比方说我的这个体系，它会提出，比方说这个穴位它应该是这样的一个震动。如果它要是一个人生病的话，那他这个穴位它可能就是堵塞了，或者它就是它的震动会有问题，或者太弱了，或者太强了。那么我们可以通过一个针灸的这样一个频率的震动来刺激这个穴位，让它回到这个正常的这个震动的频率上。比方说，这是一个可以做到的事情，而且是我觉得应该是现在的科技可以做得到的。
Yeah, thank you. So maybe I just make a small summary what Dr. Peng helped to explain with me. So basically, she mentioned that because also someone or a researcher read the books, right? So they also get the inspiration to treat the disease. For example, use acupuncture, which have the particular vibration, right, or the frequency according to your calculation, right? So then it might be helpful to have this therapeutic effect somehow. Yeah, so it's really provide, usually as you mentioned, TCM is very practical, right? So it's worked, but we don't know why, right? But with your philosophy and hypothesis, and even with this beautiful mathematical calculation, and it's really provide us more, how to say, principles, why it may works out. Yeah, I think as I truly believe, as you mentioned, this will be also very big beneficial to guide for the future music therapy, for example. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
add something?
Sure.
So, my name is David Bartosz, by the way. Because it also relates to the topic of birds, right? So it kind of topics, because I'm working at on a paper at the moment about ancient Chinese sunbird totemism, sunbird totem. So in Neolithic China and also in the Bronze Age and a little more advanced, you find several archaeological cultures produced flutes from birds' bones. So there's Hermudu culture, 5,000. Jiahu is even older, from 7,000 BCE to 4,800 BCE, and Zhulong, Hongshan Wenhua, that's near Beijing, and Hermudu is in Zhejiang, and Jiahu is in Henan province. So in several places that are kind of far away, like for example, Jiahu and Hongshan, the place Hongshan is in Heilongjiang, I think it's like 1,000 kilometers away from each other. But there is a general idea that that mythic birds are related to the sun, to the life-giving principle. To later it would be called yang, right? The life energy or the energizing element on the planet. And they all created different kinds of flutes from birds' bones, and it was applied in shamanic rituals, probably also healing, right? Probably also healing, but also in early forms of astronomy, right? So they also, some of the Jiahu, they used the crane's bones flutes as also a measuring instrument for measuring the shadow of the sun at certain times of the year, and this is 9,000 to 7,000 years ago. I just wanted to add that there's also a really ancient component here which connects the cosmos, the sun, with life, with vibration, with ritual, with a shared community ritual in China. And I think this is super interesting if we think about, right, like the future possibilities with if we could translate this general idea also into modern scientific or transclassic science, as Gotthard Günther might say, right, into new forms of understanding life in the cosmos. So I think there's really huge potential, but it can only be, as always, it can only be it can only emerge if the civilizations and cultures communicate, right? What she applied, like the geometrical wisdom from ancient Greece, from Europe, from Pythagoras to Kepler and so forth, to this Chinese tradition, which is not very geometric, right? They didn't have much geometry in pre-modern China. So and if it is like these fusions, I think would very much help maybe to open new corridors for developing also new technologies, even, I think, right? I think this is a fascinating outlook, by the way, right? Where Europe and China and India, of course, and other civilizations could communicate and revive a very ancient communication between civilizations, actually. Because if we go back, today I found that certain symbolism from the Indus River Valley can be found in Zhou Dynasty China. So they must have communicated somehow, right? And I think this is a great prospect or promise, I think.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for this. Fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's also great that Violeta, it's so fantastic to find both of you, right, to give us such a harmony lectures together. So this is really nice, yeah. So yeah, I think it's also a little bit late. So maybe I ask Dušan or Professor Mainzer, so do you still have some comments for today's curriculum? Maybe I invite you both to close the session. So no. Dušan or Professor Mainzer, you are muted.
No,
Yeah.
I should get closing comments.
Yes, yes.
No,
Please.
I want to make a long story short, and your comments were so fascinating for me, and I will not supplement too much. But anyway, what was underlined in the last remark, namely the interdisciplinary and intercultural aspect, that is really great. And I think that is actually the profile of our academy. Interdisciplinarity, and that was demonstrated between music theory and medicine, and also the bird song, and open up to natural scientific studies. But on the other side, the intercultural aspect, and how close even ancient thinking is here in Europe with Asia. Sometimes we speak about great differences. There are not great differences. It's quite similar, the theory of proportion. It's a universal humanistic experience, I think, and that is our program. We should underline that and communicate that as European Academy. So that my comment in the end as president of this academy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I could not turn on while you were calling me. I don't know what went wrong, but Klaus, you made perfect ending, and really it was just as you said, interdisciplinarity and the soul of this academy, right? I'm looking forward again to new lectures and to new introductions and comments of our president, which are always very interesting. And I don't like to say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, then see you in 2 weeks. See you in
Goodbye.
2 weeks' time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.